Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2, Episode 10, First Contact. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Lower Decks. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for the Season 2 finale. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this episode or this video otherwise. Some things will be spoiled for you. So it was a good episode. I liked it. It's similar to last week's episode where it wasn't really humor, it wasn't really the point. It wasn't about being funny. Although, of course, Lower Decks is always sort of lighthearted and has some humor in it all the time. But this is more like a regular episode of Star Trek which features some humorous moments, which tries to put in some levity. But the main plot was actually kind of serious. And you know what? I think it does a good job. I think it did a really good job at telling really good character stories, which I think the show overall, even through its more sillier episodes, does have pretty consistent, ongoing character stories, and I think this episode did capitalize on them and get you to know more about the characters and explore their character journeys a bit more, while at the same time having a pretty intense story for this one episode. That I think worked for the episode. Now, I didn't think it was the best episode ever. I actually kind of prefer the season 1 finale to this finale. As far as season finales go, I don't think this one was quite as strong as the season 1 finale. I think it could have been stronger. It's kind of, it didn't come off as wow, this is the crowning achievement of season 2. But it was good. I liked it. So let's jump into the episode. Let's get into, first off, we start the storyline with Captain Sonia Gomez. And as soon as they name dropped that name, I was like, Sonia Gomez. I recognized that instantly. It's the ensign who appeared in Q, who spilled coffee all over Picard. Or no, hot chocolate. Let me correct myself. Spilled hot chocolate all over Picard, and of course that's referenced in this episode when her ensign trips, and she's like, "Oh, I've done worse things to more intimidating captains," which I like it because that's a really subtle reference without being too, "Hey, I spilled hot chocolate on Captain Picard," but it makes a reference, so those who've seen the episode will get it. But I've heard some people saying, "Oh, she only appeared in one episode of Next Generation." Actually, she appeared in 2. This I actually remember without having to look it up. The other episode of season 2 of Next Gen she appeared in, coincidentally enough, the one with the pack lids, Samaritan Snare. So, there we go. Not that that's just a coincidence. Not that it really has anything to do with anything, but of course the pack lids are referenced a lot in Lower Decks. Anyway, it was interesting seeing her as the captain, and I think that was a really clever, really good choice because Sonia Gomez, as presented in Next Generation, was a lower decker. She was seen as a fresh ensign who kind of almost Boimler-like, who wanted to make a good impression, but actually made a bad impression on Picard, and went to Geordi as a mentor. She was meant to be a reoccurring character, but some issue happened, so she has said she only appeared in those 2 episodes. Q, who she had a pretty significant role in, because that was supposed to be her big introduction, and that is a classic episode a lot of people like to rewatch. Not me, I think that episode's not that good, but that's off topic. So I thought it was great bringing her back and seeing her as a captain, that she rose through the ranks, and it also sends the message of the show of Lower Decks that these lower deckers can eventually run through the ranks and get promoted to captain if they try hard. And this was seen as like a more prestigious ship than what than the Cerritos as well. So the Cerritos is called in as the backup. Now, of course, the main gimmick of the show is that the Cerritos' job is second contacts, but for the first time we get to see them go on a first contact mission, hence the title of the episode, First Contact. However, they're sent as backup as, you know, Sonia Gomez's ship goes in first because they're the more prestigious ship. But Gomez, of course, is I like how she's very friendly and very kind to Freeman and appreciates any help she can get, but orders her ship to, you know, stand back so not to be too intimidating to the aliens that they're trying to make first contact with, which makes a lot of sense, and Freeman agrees. So I do like that dynamic there. But then, of course, the sort of sitcom, as one of the sitcoms, there's several sort of sitcom themes in this episode, but one of them starts in play where Mariner's in the hallway and she overhears Freeman talking to Gomez about how she's getting promoted and leaving the ship. Now, if it was a real sitcom thing, this would be a misunderstanding, and Freeman isn't getting promoted at all, and Mariner just thinks she is and goes and tells everyone. So I actually kind of like it. It does subvert the sitcom trope a little for actually having that not be a misunderstanding. In fact, what Mariner heard was totally correct, that Freeman is indeed getting promoted and transferred to another ship, and she's not going to be allowed to take any of her senior staff with her. And so I like how that plays out. First we get the scene where Mariner tells Tindy and Boimler and Rutherford about this, and she's very upset, and this gets into her own personal character story, which we see play out throughout the episode, and the reason why she's so upset, and she's trying to deny and deflect this and with anger or whatnot, but really it's because she's starting to feel like she's starting to finally build a relationship with her mother, and the fact that she's going to be leaving right in the middle of this really upsets her, so she deflects and tries to come up with other reasons why this upsets her. And I do like the contrast reaction between all of our other friends, Tindy, Rutherford, and Boimler are like, oh, good for her, you know, she deserves the promotion, where Mariner's like, no, she's a betrayer, and that has to do with her, you know, own attachment to her mother, and finally being able to build this relationship after all these years, and then feeling abandoned right at that moment, and that was cool. I like that. But I love the following scenes, because I think this is good humor. This is Lower Decks doing, because everyone's, you know, a lot of episodes of Lower Decks are really over the top, ridiculous, silly, but sometimes they can do good humor, but subtly, without going over the top, but still being a bit ridiculous and still being funny. Because Mariner goes and tells your senior staff about it to try to piss them off, and it works. They get really pissed off about the fact that that Captain Freeman didn't tell them about this promotion or whatever. And I love the scene where in the bridge where they're all being passive aggressive about it, where she's just like throwing out normal orders and like, ooh, are you sure you want me to do this? Like, and then Shax is like, oh, Captain, the torpedoes are ready to be fired, and I'm telling you this because I wouldn't keep any secrets from you. That was a funny scene. I did like that, and it was resolved in the manner where she called her senior staff into the room and told them all about it, and I love how Billups was just like throwing out profanities because that was so against this character, and of course he was taking it personally because he feels that the Cerritos is a great ship, just as good as any other ship, which is true to a chief engineer being attached to their ship. So so that was a very funny scene. I did appreciate that. Now we got the side plot with Rutherford having like an error message on his cybernetic implants, and it kept interfering, like it would have a big message, and it would keep popping up and blinding his vision. I didn't really like the storyline, to be honest, at all. Even throughout the resolution, because they reveal that the reason why is because the system's overloaded, because he's creating like 4 backups of all of his memories with Tendi's, because he didn't like how he forgot her before and he doesn't want to forget her again. And eventually the only way to solve this problem of all the error messages blocking his vision, which I think is a bit silly, is to erase all the backups. Now, why doesn't he just erase like all but one of the backups? Like, why doesn't he just keep one backup? Like, that would still free up a lot of space. It seemed, and it didn't really give him that option. It's like he had to erase all of them. And I fear that the storyline where he's erasing all the backups is just setting up for another storyline where he forgets her again, which I don't really want them to do. I don't know. So I didn't like that storyline at all. And then we get the really sitcom storyline is with Tendi, where I knew it was a misunderstanding, where Tendi overhears like Dr. Tahana, I think that's her name, erasing her file and saying, "Oh, Tendi, she doesn't deserve to be here," or something like that. And so Tendi, of course, misunderstands this to mean that she's being demoted and transferred off, and they don't like her, which I knew. And they hold this throughout the whole episode, and I knew for a fact that wasn't the case. I knew that was a misunderstanding. And so Tendi and Rutherford go on like a tour of the ship, and again, I didn't like that storyline either. And of course, at the end, they reveal that if she's actually getting promoted to a science officer who's going to serve on the bridge, because Tahana thinks that she has abilities that go beyond simply being a nurse in sickbay. And I knew it was something. I knew it was going to be something like that. I knew it was going to be something positive and not negative, and that she was just misunderstanding. And so it's just like, yeah, that was really sitcom-esque. But I did like the joke they said, where Tendi is like, "Oh," so when they told her that she was going to be a science officer serving on the bridge, it's like, "Oh, like Jadzia Dax," and Tahana's like, "I don't know who that is." No, like Spock. Which is kind of a meta reference to sort of fans of DS9 or 90s Trek, relating to fans of original series Trek or whatever, which I liked. That was a good joke, but most of the storyline, that whole storyline, I did not care for. So then we have, I was going to say that Boimler didn't really have a storyline this episode, but he kind of did with the whole Captain Freeman Day, which again, I mean, I didn't hate this as much as the Rutherford and Tendi stuff, but it was obviously making fun of the Captain Picard Day thing, where they had a bunch of school children like make up little decorations for Captain Picard Day, but here they're doing a Captain Freeman Day, and it was also supposed to be for kids, but Boimler was also participating in it, and it was silly. Like, I didn't really like it all that much. Like, it was a running joke throughout the episode. I ultimately thought it was kind of dumb. Like, when they went to the cetacean ops, which I believe those were dolphins. I mean, he referred to whale pee earlier, but those are way too small to be whales. It must be dolphins. Anyway, where he asked them about Captain Freeman Day, and they're like, "Oh, those are just for calves." The whole cetacean ops thing, apparently, I mean, I never heard of it until recently, but apparently this was in the designs or the technical manuals for the Enterprise D, and I think it was originally intended to be on the Next Generation, but they never got around to it. It reminds me of the, what was that show, Sequest, where they had a talking dolphin, one that has a crew member, and it seems really silly to me. And if they're going to have a cetacean ops, why would they put a vital panel that only humans can access at the bottom of it? That whole scene where they're like, "Oh, Boimler has to swim down into this deep dark hole to get to this thing." It reminded me of like the Chompers Galaxy Quest. Like, why would they design a ship that way only for plot convenience? Only so they could have a suspenseful scene. It makes no logical sense whatsoever. Because they want to send the dolphins down to do it. They're like, oh, it's not designed for flippers. Well, why the fuck not? Like, it should be designed for the dolphins since it's at the bottom of their tank. I don't know. If they're going to do a cetacean ops, I think I would like it to make more sense. And why would the dolphins volunteer to go into space if they're just going to be trapped in this tiny little tank? Anyway, it does open up a lot of sort of things to think about in the Star Trek universe. Does this mean that dolphins in general can communicate with humans? That means there's a whole dolphin society back on Earth. That means there's like dolphin-human relations. Do they have like cities under the sea now? I don't know. That's something to think about. Anyway, so I was never that intrigued with the whole cetacean ops thing. The idea that apparently was supposed to be done in TNG that other people heard about and latched onto. But, this is that Easter egg that it's now officially canon. We now officially see it in the Star Trek show. But I don't really care. Anyway, so the main storyline. Again, this was a good, suspenseful storyline that worked for the episode. It actually had me intrigued. It had me invested. Where Sonia Gomez's ship is disabled and destroyed, or not destroyed, but disabled and on a collision course with the planet because of these asteroids or whatever that interfere with a ship and disable it. So the Cerritos wants to assist, but they can't really figure out a way to do it without becoming disabled themselves. And I like how Rutherford's the one who comes up with this plan, and he bases off of the metaphor about how Mariner needs to lower her defenses and let people in because she's puts people at arm's length with this again, and gets into another of her personal character story. And so that was a funny scene. I liked how they were hiding, that Tendi and Rutherford were hiding on the captain's yacht, and Freeman was going to take it on a suicide mission. Mariner's trying to talk out of it, but Rutherford all of a sudden just comes out of nowhere. And I'm like, what, are you spying on us? And he just ignores them. It's like, no, I got a plan to save the ship. Anyway, so they use his plan, which is to remove the outer hull and power down the ship in order so it can go fly through this asteroid field without being affected by them, which was cool. It was intense. I like how they got the whole crew together to activate this plan. They had this suspenseful moment when one of the deck plating wouldn't remove, and they needed to remove them all in order for the plan to work. And that's where the Boimler had to swim down to the thing in order to execute it. Now, the one thing I will say, there were a couple of death fake outs where they made it look like a main character was going to die. They made it look like Boimler was going to drown in cetacean ops. They made it look like Mariner was going to get blown into space. And the moments when they did that, I kept thinking, sure, why not kill these characters? They can just bring them back to life and give no good goddamn reason like they did with Shax. And again, I'm sorry for those who think I can't let this go, and I keep harping on this point because the truth is I can't let it go. I think that that them doing that severely damaged the show, so now I can never take the show seriously ever again. I mentioned that this was the case, and it is. When they have, this character might die, I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Why not? They could just die and then just suddenly reappear and then just make up some stupid bullshit about a mountain or whatever. And death has no meaning in the show anymore. It doesn't. Now, if people said that for stuff like Into Darkness or when 7 and 9 brought Neelix back to life with nanoprobes, but those were more excusable to me because those, I don't know. To me, those were just one-time things. I suppose you could argue they could always use Seven's nanoprobe, but there had to be specific circumstances. But here, it's Shax blew up, and still he's back to life, and they don't even bother to give a fucking explanation. I'm sorry, but it does hurt the show. It hurt the show going forward. I don't see the show ever recovering from this. I don't ever see whenever they put anyone's life in danger, I'm just going to think it doesn't matter. there are no stakes anymore. They completely removed all the stakes, especially since Shaq died in the season finale, and this is the big season finale. Oh, they're gonna kill off another character and just bring him back for no excuse, no reason. Anyway, because, I mean, that whole episode acted like Star Trek does it all the time, that Death Note has no meaning in Star Trek at all, which is bullshit. As I talked about, they hardly ever do that, and when they do bring characters back to life, they have a good explanation, and it has to be, very specific, very intricate, just the right circumstances for it to happen, whereas Shaq's, it's just, they give no goddamn reason, so it can happen whenever they feel like it. No. Anyway, I'm sorry. That is, I'm sure they did it for humor, but I think it directly affects the drama. But let me stop harping on that. So the plan works, and it was very exciting, and it was actually very exciting, almost a cheering moment when Cerritos shows up and stops the Gomez's ship from colliding with the planet at the last second. It was they made it more intense because they showed the people on the planet like looking at, oh, look, a falling star, not realizing that they're all about to die. But then, of course, Cerritos saves them at the last moment, and because Gomez was injured and her ship was injured, Freeman and her crew and Cerritos are the one who get to actually make first contact, which goes swimmingly. In fact, they get her very drunk, which I like. It doesn't make that much logical sense, but it's funny. And so everyone's really celebrating. Now, there's also this other side plot with Jennifer the Andorian, who I barely remember, like, they barely touched on her. Apparently she was just in the background in season 1 and season 2. They showed her a bit more. I think she was one of the red shirts, if I remember correctly, in that previous episode. But apparently, like, Mariner thinks there's like this huge feud between them that Jennifer like hates her and will tattle on her. Jennifer's like, no, I don't even think about you. There's no feud. What are you talking about? And then Jennifer saves her life at the very end when Mariner was like floating out in space. That seemed to come out of nowhere as well. And then they kind of reconcile, and Jennifer is like, well, I thought you hated me. And Mariner is starting to realize that she pushes the people that she likes away, like she does with Boimler and she did with her mother, and she's trying to correct that. So they have drinks, and she takes her by the hand and leads her over to Boimler to meet all of her friends. Now, this is where I get the impression they're setting up for a romance between these two, because I think they're suggesting that she's pushing her away because she has feelings for her. Mariner has feelings for Jennifer, and I'd be all for that, and I really hope they do that. That would be really interesting. As I said, like, they dropped the whole, some people call it queer baiting, but they dropped the fact that she was pansexual earlier, but they didn't really follow up on that. And in fact, I mentioned in that Naked Time episode when Mariner saw Jennifer making out, I think she was making out with the Trill Helms person anyway, and that, the holographic simulation of the whole it's Naked Time. Hilarious. Anyway, as I mentioned, when Mariner saw that, she was, ooh. So I think they're really hinting that she has a thing for Jennifer. So I'd like to see, I hope they are building for a romance between the two. I think that's something that Lower Decks should do. Now, then we get the big twist reveal at the end of the episode, which feels like a bit of a contrived cliffhanger. And I knew it was kind of a sitcom moment because Freeman decided that she's gonna reject the transfer, and people from Starfleet Command beamed over the ship, and she's like, I'm not gonna transfer you, I'm gonna stay here on the Cerritos. But apparently they're like, no, this has nothing to do with that. You're under arrest. And they're arresting her for participating in the destruction of the Pakled homeworld, and they said that she conspired with Klingon extremists. Now I do like how this hints at a bigger storyline that does have something to do with the Klingons' involvement in the Pakled conflict. Although in the last episode we learned that a Klingon extremist was arming the Pakleds to attack Starfleet. So why would that same Klingon extremist, of course we know it can't be the same exact guy because he was killed, but why would the Klingon extremist then destroy the Pakleds? Maybe because their plan to fight them, use them to fight the Federation failed? I don't know, or maybe it's a different Klingon extremist. But there's definitely something fishy. It's definitely a conspiracy. There's definitely something wrong because we do know that Freeman wasn't involved. In fact, I love, they all think, oh wow, you're totally going to be praised now and they're going to promote the hell out of you because you did such an amazing job. But the Starfleet security guy was just like, oh yeah, you conveniently went on this other mission while this was happening to try to build an alibi, but we know you were involved. And here's why I'm not that big on this cliffhanger ending, is because it's yet another wrongfully accused, which is a cliche storyline that Star Trek has done over and 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 over again. And to end the whole big season cliffhanger on that cliche that's so overdone and overused, not that interested in that, to be honest. However, I am interested in the overall conspiracy involving the Pakleds and Klingons. I'm interested to see where they're going to head with that. Hopefully they'll do something interesting with it and they won't just yada yada bullshit their way through like they did with Shax's death. Never going to let that go. And hopefully it won't be another cliche wrongfully accused. But it kind of will be. It already is. Like, I don't know. There's really no avoiding that, that cliche of the wrongfully accused Starfleet officer, which is so goddamn sick of saying. So there's only so much that can take this storyline, but I am interested in the whole bigger conspiracy thing and what this will mean for the Cerritos. Surely, just like in season 1 cliffhangers, everything ended up returning to the status quo, and I kind of feel like that's the kind of show that Lower Decks is establishing. This kind of show that always will return to the status quo, and you'll always have the senior officers be the same, and always the lower deckers will be the same, which for the nature, and I was hoping that the whole theme of Gomez being promoted to captain and eventually working her way up through the ranks, and Freeman getting a promotion, I was hoping that was leading to the show actually being open to change. Actually promoting Boimler, actually maybe even promoting Freeman, or making Ransom the captain or whatever. Because I think that would actually make a lot more sense. You can't have a stagnant Ensign Kim bullshit in this show. I think that would defeat the whole purpose. I think the whole purpose of the show is the goal of moving up through the ranks. And in fact, Tendi just got a promotion, so they seem to be going along with that. So I hope they continue moving people around and moving things around, and maybe introduce more lower deckers, kind of like they had that kid who was studying with Boimler in the last episode. Rather than keeping things stagnant and having Kim be the ensign for their 7 years, would make absolutely no sense whatsoever, and is an insult to his character. So if things all just return to the status quo after the storyline, just like it did after the season 1 cliffhangers, I'm going to be upset, and I'm going to think lower of the show. So hopefully they do something interesting with this, but we'll see. We got like a whole other year to wait for that. Anyway, my rating for First Contact out of 10, I'm going to give this an 8. Extremely good. I really enjoyed it. As I said, it was great character stories. The threat of the week, the suspenseful storyline, worked. A lot of things about this episode I thought worked. Some of the inter-character plays worked, but then they had a couple of sitcom subplots which didn't work for me. And of course, they ended on a cliffhanger that was all about wrongfully accused, using one of the most overused cliches in Star Trek. So, not a top-notch best episode ever, but still good. Still enjoyed it. It was still a strong finale. So anyway, that is it for my review of the season 2 finale of Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, this is not the end of my coverage of Lower Decks, as I will be back in a few short days. This Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I shall be doing a live discussion on all of season 2 of Lower Decks with my sister Alyssa from her channel Alyssa Jean Reviews, and Don Willie, both of course very recurring common guests on my channel. We'll have them here on this Saturday night for a live discussion, so you can join us in the chat. Be sure to join us for that. I will put a link to that event below, and of course if you can't make it live, you can always watch us in the archives as we discussed season 2 of Lower Decks, and I am predicting a lot of varying opinions on this season between the three of us, so it should be a very good, robust discussion. Anyway, I will also be doing my own personal overall review of season 2 of Lower Decks, where I talk about the season as a whole, which I'll release next week. And I also cover all sorts of other Star Trek stuff on this channel, as well as covering other shows like Star Wars, The Clone Wars, The Expanse, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.